Folks, it's the middle of July, and all anyone wants to do is talk about Indiana football. That's all anyone wants to do. The online folks are up ablaze over IU's non-conference schedule in future years. How is Indiana going to return to the CFP this upcoming season? One hit wonder. Last year, Matt and I talked about last week, a couple weeks ago, Matt and I talked about IU's offense for this upcoming season. Now we're going to dive into the defensive side of the ball, talk about all this scheduling drama, and so much more here on episode 348 of the Hoosier Sound, where we're the official podcast of Indiana HQ. We're recording this edition of the Hoosier Sound on Friday, July 18th, 2025. Here I am, your host, Nathan Krishnan. With me is my normal co-host, Matt Lukens. Matt, the SEC mind cannot comprehend 9 conference games. Um, let's just start with the schedule stuff. It's what people are talking about. We know this IU defense is loaded. We'll get to them in a minute, but once Indiana came out with the news that they canceled the Virginia series and it's going to be just all FCS and group of 5 teams in upcoming years, it sent Twitter ablaze. The haters came out from behind the bushes. Um, with that said, you can make an argument for both sides. Do you like the fact that Indiana is focusing more on loading up for Big Ten play, eliminating these tough non-conference matchups, or do you think Indiana should have one or two power conference teams their non-conference schedule?
I think I'm in the minority here, but I think Indiana should always have a Power Five program
Yeah, you
in
are
the
minority, big time,
non-conference.
big minority.
I completely understand wanting a easier schedule as IU. I get it. Trust me. I watch the games, guys. I
Confirmed.
follow the
Overseas
program.
from
I
halfway
watch
around the
games
world.
from I watch the games at 4 in the morning. Okay, you guys, I am committed to this team. I'm just saying, if I'm gonna get up at 4 in the morning, I don't want us to be watching. I don't want to be watching us
Old Dominion.
play against Old Dominion. Yeah, respectfully, I don't. And I know some people are gonna be mad about that, but that's whatever. If you want to come at us canceling this because they want an extra home game, by all means, that's fine. That's an acceptable argument for
Hmm.
me
Hmm.
because again, program needs to cash in on literally needs to cash in on having a
Yeah,
good program.
exactly.
At the moment, so any game you can take at home, for home revenue and
Yes.
that purpose is, you know, so important moving forward. But that being said, I'm not getting up at 4 in the morning to watch us play Old Dominion. I'm sorry. I
I'll just text you
watched
about it. I'll
IU.
text you about it. You
I
sleep
watched.
in.
I
You sleep.
no. I will. I can't sleep knowing that they're playing. Right. Like that's the problem. So I would rather that be used to play. If I was making the schedule, by the way, this is what
Sure.
I would do. And
Yeah,
we
let
got
me
just
know.
gonna
Yeah,
come
I'm
to say,
curious. Yeah.
from my perspective, I'm getting Louisville or Kentucky or who else would I put on there?
Cincinnati?
Notre Dame, Cincinnati, Notre Dame. One of the 4 Power 5 locals, right? That's not Purdue, and sticking them on the schedule. I think I'd probably just make it that we play Kentucky every year. If I was actually doing, I think we just bring the IU UK Kentucky rivalry. I think that would not be a problem this year. I think Kentucky's going to stink, right? But in some years, you actually earn the credit of playing an SEC team without actually having to play a real SEC team. So there's that.
Sure. Yeah, it's funny because Curt Cignetti, right? His big thing going into year one was no self-imposed limitations. And I actually think putting a Power 5 team or Power 4 team now on your schedule is a self-imposed limitation
I
because
disagree.
we've
Um,
seen we've seen Indiana have some pretty traumatizing losses to the teams that you mentioned. I remember watching that Louisville game just a couple years ago. It's in Lucas Oil, and I'm sitting here and I'm going, wow, this first half is awful. If you want to see a first half where Indiana played terrible, don't only look at the Louisville game from a couple years ago. There was a road game against Cincinnati. I don't remember if it was 22 or 23. I think it was 22. Or Indiana goes into Cincinnati, and that first half is awful. I mean, I don't want to make too large of a dramatization, but like, I think you can argue Tywan Mullen is not in the NFL because of that game. Because it was either Tyler Scott or Trey Tucker on Cincinnati that completely wrecked
Destroyed him.
Taiwan
Yeah.
on double moves deep down the field, and it was part of a broader season where Mullen just struggled seriously. But
Yeah.
he's always going to be one of my favorite players to watch in an IU uniform. But like Louisville first half, now Indiana figured it out in the second half against Louisville and made it close and interesting until we found out that Indiana couldn't score from the 1 yard line, and that was annoying too. So not only is this a situation where I've seen Indiana have some awful games against Louisville, against Cincinnati. Sure, Indiana did sweep Virginia in the Tom Allen era head to head. So it's like, okay, why do you drop Virginia? You probably would beat them. And yeah, you probably would beat them. But then you go into the, hey, I don't want to sacrifice a home game. I don't want to have to play Virginia on the road, especially when Indiana's got all this momentum. And then the other part of this is just this past season, Indiana got out of the Big Ten East where you played Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State every year,
Yeah.
only to face not only the two teams who came off of a year where they played in the national championship game in Washington and Michigan, but you also face the two teams that face each other in the upcoming national championship game in Ohio State and then eventually Notre Dame in the CFP, which goes to say Indiana made the college football playoff in a year where they had Florida International, Western Illinois, and Charlotte in their non conference. And then, folks, in case you forgot, the non conference slate for the two last national champions, not too impressive. Ohio State, their non conference was putrid this past season.
Mm.
Because I think part of the thought process is look, Ohio State knows if they take care of business in Big Ten play, they'll get into the CFP, whether it's like through a top four seed or through a top eight seed where you host a home game. Last year, Matt, Akron, Western Michigan, and Marshall were victims to playing as fodder at the shoe in 2024. And look, the Wolverines in 23, it was a very similar story. It was,
Yeah.
it was East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green. I just saw Indiana make a college football playoff without having to win a big non-conference game. And by the way, I've seen it on the other foot too. Because the SEC only has eight conference games, a team like LSU has to schedule USC. And LSU lost the head-to-head game against USC on a neutral site. And it wasn't really neutral.
True.
I think that game was in Texas. But anyway,
I
like
thought that game was in New Orleans, but
yeah, even less neutral. And so maybe 10 years down the road, I would love to see Indiana load up their non-conference slate with Texas and with
it was in Vegas.
Clemson. Oh, okay. All right.
In
So
Vegas.
so maybe the previous year it was LSU played a game in Dallas or New Orleans. So all right.
Yeah.
I'll turn down my SEC shade just for that game. But at the end of the
It was
day, like
LSU FSU in New
okay,
Orleans.
there you
That's
go.
the one you're
And
thinking about.
Florida State won
That
that
was a
game.
crazy game. That was an insane game.
And
Anyway,
hey, you know what? Maybe in a handful of years, we get enough data on this and we say, look, hey, Indiana now has the home revenues. The stadium has expanded a few extra thousand seats. The Hoosiers are, you know, they're doing what they've got to do against these group of five teams. But hey, a marquee non-conference game could push Indiana a little bit further to the next level. So hey, let's go out and put Florida State on there. Let's go and put some of the teams you mentioned, like Louisville or Kentucky, on there. Or hey, let's go out and put an SEC team on there to increase the Big Ten stronghold on that waning conference. So at that point, maybe. But I look at what Michigan's non-conference schedule looked like in 23. I see what Ohio State, their non-conference schedule looked like in 24. I see what Indiana's non-conference schedule looked like in 24. And I don't want to risk it. I mean, Illinois played Kansas last year in Champaign, won by like a possession. And now everyone's talking about them as a college football playoff contender. Had Illinois lost that game, I don't know how I'd feel about it. Of course, Illinois did lose to Kansas on the road a couple of years ago, and it was ugly. So like I'm good. I'm good, Matt. Let the SEC teams load up on these marquee games because they only have eight. They only have eight games. This conference that's so proud of itself doesn't play each other nine times. They only play each other eight times. What's up with
To be
that?
fair, it would be a bloodbath if they played each other 9 times.
See, it'd
Yeah,
be a
that would
pillow
be
fight.
that
It
would
would be a
be
pillow fight, Matt. That's what it would be.
no, that would be there would be bodies in the street if they played 9 times.
Oh,
8 times is enough. But I think the Big Ten honestly is ridiculous that we play 9 conference games. I think it should be eight, and then you should be able to schedule one non-conference game. Because again, to me, one of my favorite parts of the sport is seeing those teams that don't normally play each other playing each other
yeah,
in that first 4 weeks of the season. It creates some really fun matchups and some really fun storylines that come back even a couple years later, right? We end up playing a team like a Louisville or a Notre Dame in a
sure.
college football playoff, right? You can go back to look at non-conference games you played previously. I
Yeah.
I like that part. So
Honestly,
yeah,
you
just
know
to me,
what? That's part of what it is to me too. Because last year we just saw Indiana play Washington, UCLA, and Notre Dame, and I'm like, that kind of feels non-conference still. You know,
it doesn't feel a little bit
it
different, but
still
it's
feels
not.
non-conference.
It's not. None of that was non-conference except for obviously the playoff, which is
Right,
automatically
right.
non-conference. But no, I want IU to have a more national platform, and I think playing games against other Power Five conference teams. I get Virginia was going to be ass. All right, I
Yeah,
understand that,
especially giving
right?
having to go there.
Yeah, but the go in there, if you want to make the argument that it's IU wanted another home game for home game revenue purposes, fine. By all means, I give you that argument. But I just think it looks super soft. One, you go out and do this after the performance that they put on in the most recent game that they played.
Right.
And then secondly, like, come on. You gotta if you want to play with the big boys, you gotta swim with the big boys. You gotta schedule like a big boy. Now I understand the last two previous national
Yeah, that's
champions
the
like
thing.
that
Yeah. All right. Like
also
I
had a
keep
weak
coming back to that.
schedule. But let's not pretend like
Because at the end of the
Virginia
day, like
are world beaters.
you're gonna face Oregon, Penn State, Illinois, and Iowa this year. You win three of those games, you're in the CFP. That's it.
Yeah, but Virginia's not
And what puts you in the
like
best position to face those teams? Is it
it's Virginia.
you could argue it's Virginia or Kentucky. I would argue it's Kennesaw State so that you know you're gonna win that game. You're gonna feel good going into week
Nathan,
four
it's
rather than your
Virginia.
season ending because I don't know, it's monsooning in Charlottesville and you have a bad Saturday. Because I don't know, like for example, Matt, like here's a good example. Nebraska's playing Cincinnati week one this year. Nebraska's
Yeah.
feeling good about themselves. They should, right? They made a bowl game last year. They won their bowl game last year. It's been kind of a long road after the Scott Frost debacle. If Nebraska has a bad Thursday night in Cincinnati and they lose 27 to 10, even though Nebraska's a 7 point favorite, that's like a realistic outcome. It really sullies the rest of the season.
Yeah.
And like I've seen good teams go on the road and you play somebody yet you think you're gonna beat and it's just it's ugly. Now look, if there's a power five team that's if there's a power four team that's willing to play Indiana at home on a one-off, that sign me up. But until then. By the way, Matt, you want to just run through some of these non-conference games real quick? Week one, Nebraska Cincinnati, that's a true road in actually sorry, that's a neutral in Kansas City.
Yeah.
That should be a fun one. Texas, Ohio State's the one everyone's going to be talking about. Week 1, big noon, Columbus. Um, Clemson, LSU. That's going to be a fun one. Utah,
Mm.
UCLA. Non-conference game in this era. Fun to think about there. Week 2, you got Illinois, Duke. Of course, the rivalry game, Iowa, Iowa State, Oklahoma State, Oregon. By the way, I don't know if you saw this, but I believe Oklahoma is a favorite at home for their week 2 game against Michigan.
Okay.
So it's going to be a fun one to keep an eye out for. I will be painting maize and blue on my face. I will be hoping that Michigan gets that non-conference win over Oklahoma in Norman to really plant, especially if Ohio State beats Texas. You get Ohio State and Michigan beating Texas and Oklahoma. That's going to be a real feather in the cap for the Big Ten for
Well, I
the
mean, the Big
rest of
Ten's the
the.
best conference in the country this year. That is not a doubt to
I'm
me.
gonna be pumped. I'm gonna be
Um,
pumped to watch that game, especially if like Oregon takes care of business against Oklahoma State. I'll let all these other
they
teams do.
better take care against Oklahoma
They
State.
better. They better.
They
But you
better,
and
or
I were
the IU going to
talking.
show up thinking they can win.
You and I were talking though of the 4 matchups, the marquee matchups that Indiana has on their schedule. Oregon might sneakily be gettable, right? We were talking a little
Yeah,
bit there, a little bit there. Not
it's
easy, not
it's
easy, but
no,
there, there.
it's easier than it's
You may
easier
think,
than Penn State.
or than
No,
going to
I
Oregon last year.
exactly. I again, I don't trust Dante Moore. I think
And
any
you're
team
really
you're
plugged into
going,
the recruiting because he was a huge recruit coming out of high
I
school.
he's a huge recruit and he's going to be good. I just don't think he's going to be good this year. And
Yeah,
when you got a team and a defense, we're going to talk about it's built around a pass rush,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And getting to the QB, and you got a young freshman quarterback with the weight of the world on his shoulders there in Eugene.
yeah. It's gonna
Like
cost
I,
a lot.
I like Indiana's chances there. It's the Drew Allers of the world who are experienced, been through this, done
Yeah,
that, have
yeah,
a world-class offensive line in front of them, and obviously that might be like a pseudo whiteout
yep.
at that point. For Penn
Luke
State,
Altmaier's been around for a long time
Luke
with
Altmaier's
Illinois.
been around for a while,
Mark
and he's
Gronowski
been
at
through.
Iowa. He was at South Dakota State for years, but he's also experienced.
He's a seasoned starter. All of these guys aren't going to get as shaken as Dante Moore will. So I think again, IU has a very good chance of pulling off an upset in Eugene, much more than I think they have a chance of upsetting Penn State. I still think the Iowa game is more winnable than the Oregon game, but
Yeah,
that's
no,
like
no,
a
for
that's
sure.
like a
And
no shit,
and
man.
of course Illinois is at home. Illinois is at home. So anyway, so there's that. Yeah, you talked about the defense. Let's talk about the defense. This is an IU defense that had such a special season last year. Um,
Yeah,
we do lose a few guys. Jalen Walker, who, out of linebacker,
huge loss. Yeah,
he was such a game changer last season. I can't wait to
huge
see him
loss.
step up here in the preseason, training camp preseason in the NFL, I believe with the Raiders.
Yeah,
James Carpenter on the D line. Of course, we're gonna
yeah.
miss Sean Asbury out of safety, Jameer Johnson at corner, um, CJ West, NFL draft pick. Such a success story for Curt Cignetti, Bryant Haines, Pat Kuntz on the defensive line. But grand scheme of things, Indiana, I thought, did a great job as far as replacing those names and those faces and those players across the defense. The newcomers include Stephen Daly out of Kent State, Dominique
Mm.
Radcliffe out of Texas State, Jose Wheeler out of Western Kentucky, all on the defensive line. Curt Cignetti loves his trenches. Those 3 guys all graded out analytically very strong via PFF in their group of 5 teams. We'll see if they can make the leap up to power conference football. Other players that Indiana added on defense include Kellen Wyatt from Maryland. I'm looking forward to seeing him. Marion Knighton, corner from Northern Illinois. Bringing back Lewis Moore, Ole Miss, but of course previous Hoosier there. Rylan Gandy comes over from Pitt. Devin Boykin comes over from NC State. But Matt, let's start with the three A+ studs on this defensive unit. Bryant Haines brings back Mikail Kamara, Aiden Fisher, and D'Angelo Pons. I remember watching an A+ player in Micah McFadden take a step up in 2021 after his awesome season in 2020. Do you think these three guys can improve on what they did last year? Because wow, last year all three of those players were unbelievable.
100% they can. I mean, I think Mikail Kamara could become one of the best D linemen in the entire country when we're talking about just overall just recklessness in the backfield, right? Like complete destruction of teams. Like he's a guy that I think could single-handedly win games on the defensive line at like a Rutgers if we're playing any of the smaller teams. Like they're not gonna be able to handle him at
Sure.
all. Aiden Fisher's one of he might be the most seasoned linebacker in the country.
He's so good.
He has so many games played under his belt. And the it's so cliche, right? But the quarterback of the defense is the linebacker,
Oh
right?
yeah.
And with every game that a quarterback plays, the quarterback gets better. Well, it's the same thing for a linebacker. They might get a little bit more CTE, but other than that,
Please.
the more games, the more snaps they see, right? The better they are.
Yeah.
And that's not you can't say the same about a running back, right? You can't really say the same about a wide receiver. You can't say about a lot of positions, but for linebackers specifically, especially on the defensive end, the more these guys see the field, the smarter they are, the better decisions they're going to make. I thought Fisher really struggled in IU's biggest games last year.
You're right.
And I
Yeah.
think that's something that he can really learn from and grow into being that senior leader on this year's team.
That's a great point because I was actually gonna say something very similar in the sense that I remember that Ohio State game, Notre Dame game. It was a little bit rough. Now I do remember Fisher having a great game against Michigan. I feel like symbolically that was a big game. Of course, Michigan went on to beat Ohio State and Alabama before the season ended. But Aiden Fisher I thought had a great game against Michigan, great game against Maryland, but at the end of the day, yeah, those two premier matchups, it was a little bit underwhelming. I can't wait to watch Mikael Kamara. I mean, I went back and watched some games from this past season, and even when he's not making highlight plays, he's making highlight plays. I mean, he's
Yep.
taking on two blockers and he's still pressuring the quarterback, or he gets a key run stop on first down to force a 2nd and 10 or a 2nd and 9 instead of a 2nd and 4, 2nd and 5. Um, he is so good at affecting the play, even if he doesn't punctuate it with a sack or a big hit. That's the type of production on defense that makes such a big deal nowadays. I think more than ever. I think several years ago, people really just looked at sacks and tackles and interceptions. And now you're really digging into players that, even when they're not doing that, they're pressuring the quarterback. They're taking on a couple of blockers. They're influencing the play, even if they're not landing it. I am so proud of what he's done in his career. Again, this is a JMU guy. He was not
He's one of the OGs.
he's one of the OGs, and like there are several players on this defense. There's several players on this team that could break Indiana's drought of not having a first round draft pick in the NFL since 2000. Mikael Kamara is one of them. No question about it. He's definitely in the mix there as far as a guy who could make that happen. D'Angelo Pons, it's tough at corner. Um, you do see ups and downs when it comes to corners in college football and the NFL. We actually talked about Taiwan Mullen at the start of this. It looked like he was going to be, a lock legend for years. And it's hard, man. When other offenses sort of learn more about you. And again, you talked about the quarterbacks in Indiana is going to play this upcoming season. Luke Altmaier, Drew Aller. There's several others on the Big Ten slate that are going to be challenging. Damon
Yeah.
Willie, Iamaliava, UCLA. He could be dangerous. There's several players in that category, and if they sort of pick on you a little bit, I'm gonna keep my eyes on D'Angelo Pons this upcoming season. I think he's gonna be great, but corner is a position where you do see a lot of variance year to year. So I'm looking forward to seeing him step up. There are a lot of new names on this defensive line, Matt. We talked about Jose Wheeler, Dominique Ratcliffe, and Stephen Daly. It was funny as we were talking before starting recording. It seems like Curt Cignetti, Bryant Haines, Pat Kuntz really like players that step up, a group of five players that step up in these non-conference games against Power Four teams. For example, my favorite stat with Jose Wheeler is that in 2023, when Western Kentucky played Ohio State, he sack
Mm.
stripped Kyle McCord and forced a fumble that Western Kentucky recovered. In 2024, Jose Wheeler sacked Jalen Milroe and forced a fumble that Alabama recovered. Stephen Daly last season sacked Pitt's starting quarterback in the non-conference game that Kent State played against Pitt. And then, by the way, he also sacked Curtis Rourke in a Kent State Ohio game back in 2022. Dominique
Yep.
Ratcliffe is also a raw player. I don't know how many snaps he'll get, but we'll keep an eye out for that. And then you also have Tyreek Tucker, Mario Landino returning to this defensive line. Matt Curt Cignetti, Bryant Haines talk so much about the importance of trenches. I feel like this defensive line is going to be all right this upcoming season, even after losing CJ West and James Carpenter. Am I putting too much stock into these newcomers, guys like Daly and Wheeler, to fill in the gaps left by West and Carpenter?
I don't know if you are. I don't think if you are putting enough stock into how
Yeah,
good they are actually going to be.
you
Like
think so? Okay.
I'm a full-on believer that this defensive line is significantly upgraded.
Oh, wow.
Significantly upgraded. I think it's much deeper than it was last year. I think it's more has more diversity in the players that are there. I think you can use a bunch of the guys very differently than how you could use the guys last year. And I think where IU really struggled was down the stretch last year in the most important games.
Yeah.
They looked gassed. Now, to be fair, and the two most important games that we played last year, which was Ohio State and Notre Dame,
Yep.
the defense was on the field for a majority of the time, right?
Sure.
And
Yes.
so that's on the offense to get that stuff working out, which obviously we've talked about it. The offense is also upgraded at
And then
almost
we
every
also
position.
talked about offense this year, just like you're talking about defense, having some more versatility to it. So that's an interesting theme throughout. I like that point.
Yeah, this team up and down the roster. I mean, again, it's just giving Cignetti another year of kind of tinkering with the little, the gears, the knobs, and the switches that go behind this program, right? And yeah, the team itself is just so much more dynamic all across the board. More depth, more talent, more high level talent. We're going to talk about some guys in a second here that come over from Power Five level
Yep.
teams, and whatnot.
Power four.
Guys,
R
we've talked
RIP RIP
Power
Pac-12.
Four, Power Five.
RIP Pac-12.
You've talked about guys from the G5, sorry, that have significant experience
Yeah.
and highlights against the Power Four. Um, and so this up and down this roster, there's just so many more players that you can plug and play. So if you lose a guy for 3 games, like last year, if we lost anybody for 3 games
Oh,
or at all,
wow.
it was
Yeah.
a struggle. We lost Rourke for like what, 2 games last
Yeah.
year?
Yeah.
3 games? It was a struggle. It's going to be the same way forever if it wasn't for Cignetti going through and actually filling in. We can go to the second depth chart, and I
Yeah.
like almost all of the guys
Yeah.
except for an offensive line.
Sure.
And at every other position on the team, I don't mind. I guess QB and offensive line. Other than that, the guy that's second in fiddle, like I like those guys. I like their promise. I like the possibility of them playing.
Yeah. It's funny, you mentioned our backup quarterback, Grant Wilson, who he's going to face his old foe, old friends with Old Dominion in week 1. And then in week 2, Indiana's going
Yeah.
to face Dexter Williams, who, of course, used to wear the Indiana uniform, and now Dexter Williams at Kennesaw State. So early September is going to be all about backup quarterback reunions. It's also going to be about letting some of these players compete against each other, right? We talked about the non-conference slate, 3 cupcake wins for Indiana at the start of the season. Um, you get to see some of these guys who are penciled in as starters face off against guys who are penciled in as backups. And there's no better competition than real game competition. And you talk about, hey, someone like Mario Landino, we saw him step up in some moments last year as a freshman, homegrown in this defense. Now he's back for year 2. Hey, can he step up? And in those non-conference games, can he make a big splash? So that when Luke Altmaier comes to Bloomington, hey, maybe Mario Landino's out on the field for a little bit more than you would expect. Jamari Monette, same situation. Tyreek Tucker, OG from JMU, he really stood out to me last year when he got snaps, but you're gonna have to earn them in this coaching staff. You're gonna have to earn them in the system over guys like Jose Wheeler. You're gonna have to compete with Dominique Ratcliffe in order to get onto the field. Kellen Wyatt, we'll talk about the linebacker position in a little bit, but how does he fare in this defense? Is he going to start? Is he going to come in is he going to be a backup? Is he going to be rotational? This defensive line to me did lose Linnell Carr as a pass rusher. You want to call him defensive line linebacker or whatever, but you do lose Linnell Carr as a pass rusher. But with that said, I do like seeing some of these second, third stringers having an extra year of experience, like you mentioned, having Mario Landino, Jamari Monette, they're in the system for another year. I think that's going to make a big difference. But as we saw last year, CJ West, he made the leap up to power conference football. James Carpenter made the step up to power conference football. You're going to have to take on NFL interior offensive linemen at least pretty much every week now, especially once you start week 4. I'm looking forward to seeing Dominique Ratcliffe, Stephen Daly do those type of things this upcoming season. Jose Wheeler as well, because they did splash last year against power conference opponents. Looking forward to seeing them keep that going here as Bryant Haines and Pat Kuntz keep leading this defensive line. We're going to talk about linebackers, pass rushers, secondary coming up in just a sec. But first, it's time for Who Won the Week this past week in IU sports. And we're gonna make some history on our podcast. 348 episodes in. We're not giving this award to a human.
Huh?
We're not gonna give this to a human. Hoosier the Bison is is who won the
No,
week
no,
this
keep
week.
going, keep going.
Is who
Yeah,
won the
keep.
week this past week in IU sports. IU breaking breaking the mold here. First time in 60 years with the mascot. Hoosier the Bison is going to debut on August 30th in the football season opener against Old Dominion. Buffalo Wild Wings is already in the quote tweets, already in the mentions. Indiana football is so back.
Does Buffalo Wild Wings get to own just everything Buffalo?
You know
Does that
what?
how that works?
Between them and Josh Allen, I guess that's all the Buffalo ownership. But you know what? Hey, I'll take B Dubs. You know what? Jeff Goodman, he strained our relationship with Buffalo
Uh,
Wild Wings.
uh,
Let's not pick fights with restaurants. You know what I'm saying? If B Dubs, nationally known, wants to, lock arms with our football program, I'm in. I'm in, Matt. Why are
mm.
you? Come on. Have you ever had a bad experience at B Dubs?
Have you ever had a good experience at B-Dubs?
Look,
I've
making
never had a bad
history.
experience. I've never had a bad
Why?
experience at B-Dubs, but I've also conversely never had a
Why are
good
we why are we
experience at
picking
B-Dubs either.
fights? Man, we're picking fights
I'm
at
not
B
picking
Dubs.
fights. I just don't think that they should be able to
Man.
own everything Buffalo. They're a wing chain that's a a mockery of Buffalo wings.
I can't wait. I can't wait to see Hoosier the Bison storm the field week 1 against Old Dominion. Um, Indiana football, again, breaking the mold, bucking the trend. setting a new path forward for this university.
Does the mascot also go for basketball? Is it just in general?
I think so. I think so. The official release from IU is actually pretty elaborate in talking about some of the history with the Bison, the school. William Henry Harrison got a shout out, former president of the United States. Um, I believe he got assassinated in office.
He did.
Um, there you go. And
Fun
so
fact?
great.
Fun
How
question
many
mark?
podcasts talk about talk about B-dubs, William Henry Harrison, and the importance of defensive line play, all within like 5 minutes. Take that, everyone. Um, yeah. So that press release is pretty elaborate. Not, I don't believe it. There was a basketball mention in there. I can't imagine they leave out basketball. So looking forward to see Hoosier the Bison everywhere, starting August 30th against Old Dominion. Folks, a quick reminder: if you like what you're hearing, if you enjoy our show, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. Your support really helps us grow this podcast and reach more passionate IU fans such as yourself. Matt, this pass rush, linebacking crew, a lot of names. We talked about Aiden Fisher leading the way. Mikail Kamara is going to be a primary pass rusher. But there's room here for somebody to step up. So whether
Yeah.
it's Kellen Wyatt, who comes over from Maryland, whether it's Rolijah Hardy, who had a couple of big pick sixes last season, whether it's Isaiah Jones, who stepped in last year when either Aiden Fisher or Jalen Walker went down. We saw plenty of Isaiah Jones last year. He held his own. This is, to me, this is a camp battle. This is a fall camp battle to watch out for coming up in August. Who's going to step up here next to Aiden Fisher and Mikail Kamara? Is there a player here of this group, even Caden Turner, who we haven't talked about much? Like, is there somebody here who you think could potentially step up next to Aiden Fisher? Because there is room here for somebody to make a difference and make a splash.
I don't have an opinion on this because I don't think I'm well informed about these guys specifically in their games. Like I've watched their stuff, but
Yep, we've
I
seen Kellen
can't
Wyatt
compare.
at Maryland. Yep.
I'm not good enough to compare them and be like, I think this guy's better than him. So but I will say it's nice to have these conversations that we're having competition.
Yeah.
How many years do we go into the first game and we just kind of know what the starting lineup's going to be based off of
Well,
just a
it's
lack
almost
of depth?
just, yeah, I was gonna say more like attrition, right? It's just like, well, this guy is freshman or whatever. He's not. There's no way he can start.
Yep.
It
There's
is
no way
funny
he can
though.
start here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it is funny though. Like we talked about some of the defensive line guys. Jose Wheeler,
Yeah.
Stephen Daly. They've played 35 plus games in their collegiate careers coming into this season. Um, Kellen Wyatt's played a lot of college football, 35 games over multiple seasons at Maryland. Of course, Aiden Fisher is going to be the focal point of the linebacking group here on Indiana. Mikail Kamara has played a ton of games as well. So if Cignetti leans experience, I think you're going to see a little bit more of Kellen Wyatt than you might expect. If he leans some of the more, but with that said, like if I could easily see Cignetti going, hey, you know what? Isaiah Jones last year stepped up for us in multiple situations. He's been here multiple years in the system. Um, I could really see him deliver. We talked about Holden Stace last week at tight end, or maybe a couple weeks ago at tight end, and how
Yeah.
he's kind of the unique player on this offense as far as Cignetti truly going potential over production with Holden Stace. I think that's Rolijah Hardy on this defense. And I know he had two pick sixes last year, but you know what? They came in sort of lopsided matchups. Of course, every game for Indiana was lopsided, except Michigan. But with that said, like this Indiana team, if Curt Cignetti sort of wants to raise the ceiling of this defense. That's like an overused sentence, this floor ceiling stuff, but I'll say it. I think it does apply here. If you want to add sort of an X factor, wild card, big play element to this defense, that means you'll see a lot more Elijah Hardy on the field. This is a guy who's a sophomore. There aren't many sophomores or freshmen on Indiana's two deep right now. It's a lot of
Yeah.
seniors, sprinkle in some juniors. Elijah Hardy is the guy. If you see Elijah Hardy play a lot the first few games of the season, those three non-conference games, that to you should be an indication that Curt Cignetti is saying, I want to add a little bit more big play explosiveness to my defense. I might concede a couple things here and there, but I'm getting this possibility where Elijah Hardy blindside blitzes a quarterback and sacks him into next Wednesday. Or Elijah Hardy gets a deflection, tips the ball into the hands of
Yep.
Pons or Knighton or Devin Boyk, right? Like that's the type of element there to keep an eye out for. On the other hand, if you see a lot more of Kellen Wyatt, Isaiah Jones, that to me is like, hey, those players have stood out to Cignetti. They're reliable, they're solid, they're consistent.
Mm.
That's where Elijah Hardy could be in a couple of years. But going into sophomore season, I don't see that. So that's going to be a really intriguing development to watch during fall camp, during those three non-conference games to start the season. I'm probably going to be paying attention to that group more than any as far as the early part of the season is concerned. The secondary is going to be awesome, Matt. I love
They're gonna be
this
great.
makeup. I
Yeah.
love this makeup in the secondary. It's going to be a big time. I believe Buda Williams is the defensive back coach still on this football team. D'Angelo Pons, we've talked about him, but outside of Pons, your penciled in starters are Jamari Sharp at the other corner, Devin Boykin, transfer from NC State at nickel. Amari Farrell
Mm.
and Lewis Moore at safety. Of course, Amari Farrell and Lewis Moore are both players who can do a few things defensively. They can slide down the corner. They can come in, blitz off the edge. And then you have backups penciled in right now, all penciled in. Amarian Knighton from Northern Illinois. Byron Baldwin, true freshman, who decommitted and recommitted. Ryland Gandy, who has plenty of games under his belt as a corner from Pitt. Bryson Bonds, we've seen him do some important things, both in the Tom Allen and the Curt Cignetti era.
Mm.
This secondary, Matt, just go off because Indiana's going to be playing some tough offenses. This secondary is, there aren't many better secondaries you'd like to go to battle with than these guys.
I think this might legitimately be the best secondary IU has ever had as a program, like top down. And I think we've said that before on this podcast because I'm pretty sure we said that with Taiwan Mullins, but
Yeah, because remember we
Taiwan
had
Mullins getting a
Taiwan, we had
ton of
Jamar Johnson that year,
Jamar Johnson, Taiwan Mullen. Oh God, who were their
Jalen
safeties?
Williams was
Jalen
awesome.
Williams. Yeah.
Like
I
there have been some great secondaries at
and
Indiana,
you've said this
surprisingly.
too, that secondary play is kind of up and down,
It
right?
is just
I
inherently.
don't see that with this group. Like they're so seasoned at this point. Seriously. I mean, again, we're returning people, and I can't believe I'm saying this, but we're returning a ton of people from a playoff team.
And then, as you mentioned, Power Five incoming transfers: Devin Boykin, NC State; Ryland Gandy, out of Pitt; Lewis
Yeah,
Moore, Ole Miss. And that's in addition
these
to
are
Amarian
these.
Knighton from Northern.
How often does has IU gotten Power Five transfers that are going to come in and be play backups?
And if they're
Backups.
not backups, they'll get playing time as rotational pieces. They're going to compete for starting reps. Like it's
Yeah, they're
healthy.
gonna play. They're gonna play. They're
Yeah.
gonna play, but they're just not. They're not gonna play like starter minutes, right? And who's the safety from NC State whose name is slipping my mind?
Devin Boykin.
Uh,
He might be
Devin
nickel. He might be
Boykin.
safety. Yeah.
The He plays secondary.
Versatility.
The he yeah, again, I've heard this team like all over the board, versatile. He's been off of football for a year and a half
Yeah.
now.
Injury.
Like,
Yeah.
as again, his injury came in prep for the Pop-Tart Bowl, I believe, right?
Yes.
For
Correct.
NC State
In the 2023
and
season. Yeah.
and the 23 season. He didn't even play last
Yep.
year. So he's completely fresh, ready to go. So I'm super excited. I mean, again, I legitimately think they are the best secondary IU's ever had.
It's crazy. I think PFF graded IU out as a top 10 secondary in college football. I said Buda Williams, by the way, he's a defensive ends coach. We got to give our shout out to Ola Adams here, who's been so good as far as
Ola
the
Adams.
secondary is
Great
concerned. He's
names.
great name, great follows on social media too. Um, Rod Ojong's really good as far as the social media stuff as well. He's the corners coach. So Ola Adams, Rod Ojong, both important there as far as developing the secondary. You talked about Indiana returning a lot of good players from the CFP team. They returned their entire defensive staff from the CFP team. Absolutely enormous there to bring back Bryant Haines. Nice try poaching him, all of you bloodthirsty power conference jerks trying to steal our defensive coordinator. He's back in addition to the
Mm.
rest of that, support positional staff. Ola Adams, Pat Kuntz, Rado, John Buda Williams. It's in a really healthy spot right now. And I talked about my favorite stat with Jose Wheeler. My second favorite stat is with Devin Boykin, who, like you said, missed a year of college football. He has four career picks during his 4 years of college football at NC State. They came against Florida State, Clemson, Miami, and North Carolina. So all quality ACC opposition. They all came in wins for NC State against quality ACC opposition. And the four quarterbacks are Jordan Travis, Kate Klubnik, Tyler Van Dyke, and Drake May. That's pretty good. Pretty good hit list
That's a pretty good list.
for Devin Boykin. So hey, hopefully he can take Dante Moore or Drew Aller or Luke Altmaier, add him to that list. Um, I know we all are huge fans of D'Angelo Pons. I think there's a chance, Matt, that by the end of the year, I feel the same way about D'Angelo Pons. I'll feel the same way about Amari Farrell as I do about D'Angelo Pons right now.
I can see that. Yeah.
The way
Yeah,
he's
yeah, 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 yeah.
so versatile, he you can manipulate his coverage, his blitz, his tackling. Like he is capable of doing so much on the football field. He had some massive plays last year, and I think refs gave him a bit of a harsh whistle. I think now in his second year as a prominent player in the Big Ten, I think they'll understand how he plays a little bit more. I feel like the UCLA game he got a bad penalty called against him. Maybe it was the Michigan State game, but I liked watching him so much last year. And I think this is a player who, when you think about emerging threats on this football team, um, I felt this way about Omar Cooper on offense. I think I was sitting here saying, hey, Omar Cooper might be the most underrated receiver in the Big Ten. I feel like I maybe said something like that. Um, I think Amari Farrell is in that same conversation on the defensive side of the ball, where we sit here and
Yeah.
say, hey, we watched this dude make a big play or two every game last season, but now I'm looking forward to seeing him start. I'm looking forward to him to seeing him play every snap, seize the opportunity, get into NFL draft conversation, talk about all conference type of performance throughout the year, make a big splash as far as the postseason is concerned as well. I am a huge fan of players that can do several things on the football field. I feel like Penn State has developed a reputation of that on their defense.
Mm.
We just watched, Abdul Carter, for example. He wasn't just a pass rusher. He was somebody who was able to drop back in coverage. He was able to stop the run. He was able to affect the game in numerous different ways. They've got plenty of those guys in their secondary over the years as well at Penn State. And I think Amari Farrell, in another universe, he's playing college football for Penn State right now and Joe Paterno, but we have him instead. And I'm really looking forward to seeing him do numerous things on defense. By the way,
Yeah.
we also talked about the group of five trend where Curt Cignetti and Bryant Haines like to see guys who make splash plays against power conference teams. Marion Knighton picked off Riley Leonard last year in South Bend to put Northern Illinois in position to beat the Fighting Irish, which they ended up doing. So hey, maybe when it's all said and done by midseason, we're talking about Marion Knighton as a key player in the secondary. He's a junior, so he has a couple years left. But there are
Right.
a lot of there are a lot of quality players in the secondary, and I agree completely with what Matt said. I can definitely see this being the best secondary in school history and one of the best in college football. We're going to wrap this thing up in just a sec, but folks, a reminder, a social media shout out. You can find us on Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, wherever you want. On Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube, you can find us at the Hoosier Sound in Indiana HQ. Now, on Instagram, we're not Indiana HQ, but what are we?
Indiana.HQ.
You can find us there. A reminder, if you enjoy our show, again, folks, leave us a review, tell a friend, share our links. That kind of support, just algorithmically, is what really helps prop up our podcast, reach more passionate IU fans. We got football season coming up. Men's soccer going to kick off in the fall. Hoosier the Bison. Let's go. I mean, there are big things happening here. So give us a follow. I know there's a lot. Hey, Big Ten Media Days are coming up. We'll keep you up to speed on everything you need to know coming out of that fall camp, any key storylines, anything that you're interested about as it relates to IU football. We're going to be talking about it here, so make sure you grow the masses. A lot of fun stuff to discuss here, Matt. We dove into Indiana's schedule. We talked
Hmm.
about some Big Ten non-conference games. Big Ten media days around the corner. Anything you expect to see coming out of that, let me know, or you can just wrap it up, whatever you want. Of course, this IU football team is primed to have a pretty big season. Anything on your mind as we wrap up on this Friday?
Uh, nah, nothing really on my mind other than just super excited for football season to start. I think I say this at the end of every single podcast, but like I am so ready to watch this Hoosier team hit the field. They're gonna be so good. I'm so excited, really. That's it.
It's uh it's a new era for sure
It is,
because
yes.
we have not said that going into every college football season at Indiana.
No,
We've tried
no,
to
we have
pick out
not.
a couple of things to watch for. Hey, if Indiana does this, this, and this, hey, they can get to 6 wins. Hey, maybe they can win the bucket game. Um, this is a new era, and
Yeah.
on both sides of the ball here, Indiana is set up to do some really, really big things. By the way, as far as Big Ten Media Day is concerned, I believe Curt Cignetti will be stepping up to the podium on Tuesday. So keep an eye out for that. Um, Fisher, Kamara, and Surratt will be there for Indiana. Um, 3-day event in Las Vegas. That's the
Lucky
one
them. They get a
city.
free trip to Las Vegas.
Well, I mean, do you think anyone who attends Big Ten Media Days makes a regrettable mistake and serves a suspension for the upcoming season?
That would be so
So,
funny. It's
so,
gonna
so,
happen.
so, so don't drive, right? Designated drivers and Ubers everywhere.
Yeah.
That includes coaches. Mark Few,
Yep.
don't follow in his
Shout out
footsteps.
Mark Few. Shout out Mark
Um,
Few.
Bob Huggins, right? Him too, I think.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So
No.
don't, coaches and players, everyone here, staff, Big Ten Network folks, get your drivers. Um, no regrettable mistakes. It's a test. It's a preseason test. Media days in Vegas. I'm
Mm.
looking forward to hearing that. There's plenty of SEC conspiracy coming out from this week's media days for them. So looking forward to seeing the Big Ten return the favor next week. Just
Mm.
make the AP top 25, all Big Ten teams. That's what I say. Preseason AP top 25,
True.
all Big Ten teams. Throw in 7 group of 5, and there you go. Um, I don't know. Like, I can see the argument on both sides as far as non-conference scheduling is concerned, but like, I'm good with this. Like, I'm fine. And you know what? As I mentioned, maybe in 10 years we come back and we say, "Hey, look, Indiana should put a marquee power conference opponent on their schedule." But you know what? We'll see.
They
We'll see how
should.
Curt Cignetti. We'll see how Curt Cignetti handles these things over the
It's
next
not
several
if, it's a sh
years.
they should. They
No,
should.
no, they shouldn't. All right, folks. That about wraps it up for our 348th episode of the Hoosier Sound. Thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate your support. To hear more fantastic episodes like the one you heard today, be sure to follow us at Indiana HQ or at the Hoosier Sound. To make sure you don't miss any in the future, you can also go to our website, indianahq.com, to find it all in one place. But as always, thank you for listening, Hoosier Nation, and we will see you next time.
Peace and love, go Hoosiers.